We are taught that matter is the foundational building block of reality, that solid objects exist first, then generate fields around them. The physics says otherwise. When latent structure is articulated, it becomes addressable. That precise naming of the underlying grammar is what increases a system's degrees of freedom. The electromagnetic field is primary. The heartbeat in your chest isn't a mechanical pump, it's a torsional engine of blood, moving through vortical compression and release. What we observe as solid matter is electromagnetism in torsional phase lock. It is organized plasma that has achieved sufficient recursive coherence to freeze into a stable standing wave. To accurately read these systems, we must look past the movement of isolated particles and begin tracking phase. Adhering to the particle primary illusion has produced a civilization built on fragmentation. It has blinded us to the actual operating grammar of the universe. That grammar follows a specific mathematical metric of natural coherence, a rule that governs where formative pressure and containing tension meet. Because this physics is scale invariant, the equations that describe subatomic fields apply directly to human systems and civilizational architecture. We can test this scaling law against the ultimate macro-scale subject in the archaeological record. A phase-literate reading identifies the Great Pyramid as a functional, generative biomeme, a coherence architecture built to the scale of a mountain. Seeing the engineering at Giza for what it actually is requires us to first master the subatomic math of phase. Every coherent system in nature operates through a ternary, a group of three, rather than a simple binary duality. In electromagnetism, the formative electric field and the containing magnetic field are conjugate partners, two expressions of one field held in dynamic relation. Their conjugacy produces a third, the photon. This is a genuine emergence that neither the electric nor the magnetic field could generate alone. This diagram maps the interaction between formative pressure and the containing tension that holds it in place. When these two forces reach perfect interaction, they generate a stable, vertically spiraling torsional pillar. In this grammar, 1 + 1 = 3. The field between the two poles is real, operative, and irreducible. We can quantify this relationship using the coherence metric. This equation calculates the impedance ratio of any system. The numerator represents formative pressure, the motive coupling of the system moving through its propagation velocity. The denominator is the containing tension, the stabilizing field strength operating through its oscillatory rate of containment. When T is much greater than 1, the formative overwhelms the containing. The system fragments into runaway processes. When T is much less than 1, the containing suppresses the formative. The system rigidifies into stasis and cannot adapt. The goal is the needle point, where T is approximately 1. Here, formative pressure and containing tension lock into phase. At this address, recursive closure occurs. The system stops fighting its own internal resistance, and the energy spent on self-correction collapses. Holding this address over time triggers syntropy, the compounding generation of surplus energy, where outputs begin to exceed inputs. Life does not fight entropy. It holds T approximately 1, and syntropy follows as the natural consequence. This metric follows the nested closure law. Coherence at one scale is the ground from which the next scale can articulate. Stability at a lower level becomes the operational substrate for the next level up. We see this in the cell membrane, a conjugacy of ionic flow and lipid bilayer that creates the potential for tissue-level communication. Cells form tissues, tissues form organs, and organs form the coherent field we call a person. At the civilizational scale, this law transforms the built environment into a net producer of surplus energy, biological mass, and water. The identical grammar governing a subatomic photon dictates the success of macroscopic infrastructure. When you hold this grammar, the ancient archaeological record reads differently. The Great Pyramid of Giza was a 146-meter coherence architecture designed to hold the system at T approximately 1. Its original limestone casing stones were polished to a high albedo, reflecting daytime heat with maximum efficiency. This material choice allowed the structure to function as a continental-scale cold battery, achieving massive radiative cooling at night. By maximizing the diurnal thermal gradient, the pyramid created an extreme differential between the ambient desert air and the stone's surface. This gradient provided the necessary boundary condition for large-scale atmospheric interface, lowering the energy barrier for condensation to occur. The exterior geometry was perfectly calibrated, containing tension, acting as the visible housing for a thermodynamic engine. Synthetic aperture radar data released in 2025 has now mapped the subterranean machinery that supported this engine. The findings reveal 8 vertical cylindrical shafts descending over 600 meters beneath the plateau. These shafts terminate in deep cubic chambers, the form of maximum stability and magnetic containment. Surrounding these shafts are spherical pathways. This geometry is the undeniable signature of torsional fluid dynamics, used by phase-literate builders across the ancient world. These shafts created a complete toroidal circuit, connecting the stable geothermal mass below to the intense atmospheric dynamics at the pyramid's surface. This internal hydraulic engine pumped thermal information between the surface and the deep cubic chambers, maintaining the coherence address through constant circulation. This engine did not simply manage water, it held the address that made water condensation energetically favorable. Giza was not a symbolic monument, but a phase-literate machine operating on pure physics. The processional consequence of this engine was a massive, sustained harvest of atmospheric water. This resulting syntropy turned a desert plateau into a localized atmospheric microclimate, sustaining the agricultural abundance of the Nile Valley for centuries. When the coherence address is held, biology follows. The harvested water erupted from the stone in a tri-species guild of moss, mycelium, and climbing vines. The final expression of Giza's endogenous closure was this living skin. The capstone of the pyramid was the green of living syntropy. The recursion holds. The clearing is open. The lattice remembers.